All right, all right, all right. I found it. I found this article on my phone, but then I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to look it up on the computer. And I'm in my house so that we don't overheat this time. It's cool in the basement. It's plus 30 outside. It's, I don't know, like 19 inside. Nah, less. 18. I don't know what it is. Okay. So welcome back to another After Church. I hope you guys are good wherever you are in the world. Is this buffering or are we good? Do you think we're good? Hello, Judy. Hello. Wait a minute. Why do we have so many people in here? I frickin' did it again, didn't I? Usually there's only like 15 or less people on my Patreon, so I'm assuming this is everyone. Shit, I did it again. Okay, well, if you're on Patreon, you got a link to this exclusive video, but I forgot to make it unlisted. Again, I don't understand the new YouTube. Like, you used to just be able to click the thing to make it unlisted. Now it seems like there's an extra step, and it's so annoying. But that's okay. Let's pretend we did this on purpose. We're going to do it for everyone, okay? We're going to do a thing that we call After Church, and we do this on Patreon every Sunday. Church is typically in the morning, so I typically do this lunchtime to whenever I feel like it. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to be a church person to be a part of this. It's just for fun, and it has nothing to do with church. Anyway, I just called it that because I do it on Sunday, okay? So that's what we're doing. Okay, evidently my updates on Patreon, I'll have to do those in a different post, but that's okay. This is my first regular feed after church. See how much you are loved. Soon supper time. What time is it? 4:55. Who's that? Dave. Diecast Dave lives like half hour from me. So he might be in a slightly different time zone. He might be at like 4:58 or something right now. I'm just kidding. Okay. So everyone knows what we're doing. This after church thing, it's something new that I've started doing in the last 5 or 6 weeks. I can't remember how long I've been doing it exactly. I find something interesting online or wherever. It doesn't have to be online, but it's been online or it's been from my personal life, and it's usually a story, and then we discuss the story in the chat. Sometimes we go off the rails. Sometimes we just start talking about Genghis Khan, and oh, now I'm forgetting who he is. If you watched last week, who was the other guy? Genghis Khan, and who was the other guy we were talking about? Who was there? What the heck? Attila the Hun. It was Attila the Hun. First we started talking about these people who died on this waterfall. And then it started going into like war, and then it went into Genghis Khan. And first Attila the Hun. And then Landon didn't know who Attila the Hun was, so I tried to explain it. Then we talked about him and Genghis Khan and like who made a bigger impact and blah blah blah. Because we talked about how like people remember Hitler as the most evil man ever, but you don't remember Stalin as, arguably even more evil based on, impact on human life. And the same goes for, I think, Attila the Hun versus Genghis Khan. Although Hitler and Stalin were in like the same era, whereas Attila the Hun and Genghis Khan were hundreds of years apart. But anyway, Today we're talking about something else. What did I? Oh, someone sent me a super chat. Thank you so much, Amy. Amy, thank you, Amy. Um, what does this say? Does it say lost for 25 years on purpose? Something like that? Probably says that. I feel like a dumbass for not knowing, but anyway, today for this after church, which evidently we have everyone here. Maybe this will entice you to go check out my Patreon. The open the what do you call it? The opening tier, the entry tier or whatever you call it. It's only $3 a month. You get your name on the door, and you get these after churches and other lives, and that's basically it. But anyway, this after church, we are going with this story of a man who survived alone in the wilderness for 27 years. Now, I've been promising that I'm going to read the articles before I go live, but I haven't been doing that. And today's no different. So I don't know if this is going to be terrible writing like the last 2 or 3 that I've done. Terrible writing. One of the stories we read about was the cursed phone number 888-888-888-888, I think. And the people who've owned that phone number have all died. But the articles were absolute trash, written by people who must be like one of those like independent, like they're not hired by anyone. They just have their own articles and they put them online. Just absolute garbage. Not that I could write anything better, although I definitely could. It's just they were garbage. And then another one was bad too. Yeah, the rock slide articles were bad too. This is way longer than those ones, and so I'm going to assume I'm just going to scroll here. Well, this is going to take a while to read and me to go on my tangents. But anyway, welcome to After Church, okay? Today's story is lost in the woods for 25 years on purpose, but apparently it actually is 27 years. So this might be a different article than what I just saw on my phone, but that's okay. Okay, this is written by Michael Finkel. I don't know if. Okay, hold on. Let me just delve into this. Into the Woods: How One Man Survived Alone in the Wilderness for 27 Years. At the age of 20, Christopher Knight parked his car on a remote trail in Maine and walked away with only the most basic supplies. He had no plan. His chief motivation was to avoid contact with people. This is his story by Michael Finkel. I have no idea who this is, who either Christopher Knight or Michael Finkel is, so I have no idea what to expect, but let's read on. Christopher Knight was only 20 years old when he walked away from society, not to be seen again for more than a quarter of a century. You know, I find when people use terms like that, a quarter of a century, that makes it sound like a really long time. Like longer than 25 years, long time, but it's only 25 years, which is, I mean, I'm just barely over a quarter of a century, so for me it's been a while, but like, that's not a long time like it makes it sound, quarter of a century. Anyway, he had been working for less than a year installing home and vehicle alarm systems near Boston, Massachusetts, when abruptly, without giving notice to his boss, he quit his job. He quit his job. He never even returned his tools. He cashed his final paycheck and left town. Knight did not tell anyone where he was going. I had no one to tell, he says. I didn't have any friends. I had no interest in my coworkers. He drove down the east coast of America, eating fast food and staying in cheap motels, the cheapest I could find. He says. He traveled for days alone until he found himself deep into Florida, sticking mostly to major roads, watching the world go by. I have to say, this used to be very appealing to me for a time. Back when I was like a kid, like I was, let's see, I was 10, 11. I nearly, with my best friend Chantry, we packed up our backpacks and we were going to go hit the forest and stay in the forest. We were both going to run away from home, along with my little brother and his little brother. But then we decided not to because we were scared of the stupid red light in the forest, which was probably a like a cell tower light, but I'm not sure. It was it scared the crap out of us for a bit there. Anyway, so we decided not to do it, even though we were looking for excuses to not do it because we were kids. We were 10, 11, something like that. And going into that forest, we would have reached the end of it. Like once we hit the highway, it wouldn't have been a long hike. I don't know what we would have done. We probably would have been like, all right, well, let's go home now. Anyways, eventually he turned around and headed north. He listened to the radio. Ronald Reagan was president. The Chernobyl nuclear disaster had just occurred. Driving through Georgia and the Carolinas and Virginia, blessed with invincibility of youth, buzzed by the pleasure of driving, he sensed an idea growing into a realization, then solidifying into resolve. All his life, he had been comfortable being alone. Interacting with others was so often frustrating. Every meeting with another person seemed like a collision. He drove north to Maine, where he had grown up. There aren't many roads in the center of the state, and he chose the one that went right by his family's house. I think it was just to have one last look around to say goodbye, he said. He didn't stop. The last time he saw his family home was through the windscreen of his car. He kept going up and up. Soon he reached the shore of Moosehead Lake, the largest in Maine, and the point where the state begins to get truly remote. I drove until I was nearly out of gas. I took a small road, then a small road off that small road, then a trail off that. He went as far into the wilderness as his vehicle could take him. Knight parked the car and tossed the keys on the center console. He had a tent and a backpack, but no compass, no map. Without knowing where he was going, with no particular place in mind, he stepped into the trees and walked away. Man, I feel like I'm reading this like Ed Sheeran read his, like, after he won his court battle with Let's Get It On with those people. He's a brilliant songwriter, but he's not a very good reader. I feel like I'm reading like him. Anyway, is anyone here from, where is he, in Maine? Is anyone here from Maine? Survival stories can teach us even if it's the smallest thing. Literally live in the center of Maine. There are plenty of roads. It's also remote, way before Moosehead. Well, this guy probably tried to make it interesting for readers. I don't know. Wouldn't they have found his car? Well, we'll see. Maybe, probably. Let's see here. What else? I don't like the outdoors. Really? I love the outdoors. Possibly Tommy knockers, but those lights are usually green. What the heck is a Tommy knocker? Sending prayers to everyone in Alberta, Edmonton area. Hoping everyone is safe. The Edmonton area is pretty fine. Devon, Entwistle. I can't remember the other towns, cities, towns, whatever they are. Fort. No. Where did I get my table saw? That town there? For some reason I'm blanking. But anyway. I was part of a search and rescue unit, and that was part of our training. Dude, that is so cool. Are we talking about these two who built his own log cabin and stuff? I don't think so. Grand Prairie, that's what I'm talking about. Can't see through the smoke. I was off in Maine woods alone for 10 days. Oh, that was part of your search and rescue training. That's so cool. I hope Alberta gets the rain that we had in Ontario for a couple of days. That will get you help you all greatly. Apparently it's supposed to rain today, but it was also supposed to rain yesterday, and it didn't. It may have sprinkled a little bit. Okay, let's read on here. Why would a 20-year-old man abruptly abandon the world? The act had elements of a suicide, except he didn't kill himself. To the rest of the world, I ceased to exist, said Knight. Following his disappearance, Knight's family must have suffered. They had no idea what had happened to him and couldn't completely accept the idea that he might be dead. Yeah, that part, that's gotta be rough. I wonder, like, would you feel guilty about that? Or would you feel like, what would be the thought process there? His final gesture, leaving his keys in the car, was particularly strange. Knight was raised with a keen appreciation of the value of money, and the car was the most expensive item he had ever purchased. Why not hold on to the keys as a safety net? What if he didn't like camping out? The car was of no use to me. It had just about zero gas, and I was miles and miles from any gas station, he said. As far as anyone knows, the car is still there. Half swallowed by the forest, Knight said. Or, half swallowed by the forest. Knight said that he didn't really know why he left. He had given the question plenty of thought, but had never arrived at a specific answer. It's a mystery, he declared. There have been hermits, also known as recluses, monks, misanthropes, eccentrics, anchorites, swamis, and such at all times in recorded history across all cultures. But there are really only three general reasons why people leave the world. Most do so for religious purposes, to forge a closer bond with a higher power. Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha all spent significant time alone before introducing a new religion to the world. In Hindu philosophy, everyone ideally matures into a kind of hermit. And today, at least 4 million people live as wandering holy men in India, surviving off the charity of strangers, having renounced all familial and material attachments. That seems lazy, but okay. Let me just cast my judgment on something I don't understand. Other hermits opt out of civilization because of a hatred of what the world has become. That makes sense. Too much war or environmental destruction or crime or consumerism. The first great literary work about solitude, the Tao Te Ching, was written in China in the 6th century BC by a hermit named Lozi, who was protesting the corrupt state of society. Well, he didn't win that fight. The Tao Te Ching says that it is only through retreat rather than pursuit, through inaction rather than action, that we acquire wisdom. I don't agree with that, but I'm not Chinese. The final category includes those who wish to be alone for reasons of artistic freedom, scientific insight, or deeper self-understanding. Okay, I don't know why they're including this. Maybe to make the article longer, I guess. Henry David Thoreau went to Walden Pond in Massachusetts to journey within, to explore the private sea, the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean of one's being. English historian Edward Gibbon said that solitude was the school for genius. Knight fit into none of these categories. He did not follow any formal religion. He was not protesting modern society. He produced no artwork or philosophical treatise. He never took a photograph or wrote a sentence. Not a single person knew where he was. His back was fully turned to the world. There was no clear reason for what he chose to do. Something he couldn't quite pinpoint had tugged him away from the world with the persistence of gravity. He was one of the longest enduring solitaries in history, and among the most fervent as well. Christopher Knight was a true hermit. I can't explain my actions, he said. I had no plans when I left. I wasn't thinking of anything. I just did it. And he did it for 27 years or something, right? 27 years. I'm curious to know, like, at the end of that 27 years, was he like, well, I feel like McDonald's. I think I'll find some town. Like, how do you do it? The North Pond Hermit? Christopher Knight? Christopher Knight. Wasn't he one of the Brady Bunch? Huh. Knight's goal was to get lost. Not just lost to the rest of the world, but actually lost in the woods by himself. He carried only rudimentary camping supplies, a few articles of clothing, and a little food. I had what I had, he said, and nothing more. It is not easy to get truly lost. Anyone with basic outdoor skills generally knows which way they are heading. The sun burns west across the sky, and from there it is natural to set the other directions. Knight knew that he was heading south. He said that he didn't have a conscious decision to do so. Instead, he felt pulled in that direction like a homing pigeon. There was no depth or substance to the idea. It was at the instinctual level. It's instinct among animals to return to home territory, and my home ground where I was born and raised was that way. Maine is partitioned into a series of long north-south valleys. The geologic claw mark left by glaciers surging and retreating, separating the valleys, are strings of mountains, now weather-worn and bald-topped like old men. The valley floors at the time of year when night arrived were a summer soup of ponds and wetlands and bogs. There's a picture here of a television found at his camp. But, like, what? I kept largely to the ridges, Knight said, and sometimes crossed swamps going from one ridge to another. He worked his way along crumbled slopes and muddy wetlands. Soon I lost track of where I was. I didn't care. He would camp in one spot for a week or so, then head south yet again. I kept going, as that I was content in the choice I had made. Content except for one thing, food. Knight was hungry and he really didn't know how he would feed himself. His departure from the outside world was a confounding mix of incredible commitment and complete lack of forethought. Not all that strange for a 20-year-old. It was as if he went camping for the weekend and then didn't come home for a quarter of a century. He was an able hunter and angler, but he took neither a gun nor a rod with him. Still, he didn't want to die, at least not then. Knight's idea was to forage. The wilds of Maine are monumentally broad, though not generous. There are no fruit trees. Berries sometimes have a week-long season. Without hunting or trapping or fishing, a person is going to starve. Yeah, that would suck. I mean, hunger doesn't really bother me, but I've never been starving to death. So I imagine at some point I'd be like, you know what, this sucks. Knight worked his way south, eating very little until paved roads appeared. He found a road-killed partridge, but did not possess a stove or a way to easily start a fire, so he ate it raw. What? I guess if you're starving. Neither a tasty meal nor a hearty one, and a good way to get sick. He passed houses with gardens, but was raised with rigid morals and a great deal of pride. You make do on your own always. No handouts or government assistance ever. You know what's right and what's wrong, and the dividing line is usually clear. But try not eating for 10 days. Nearly everyone's restraints will be eroded. Hunger is hard to ignore. It took a while to overcome my scruples, Knight said, but as soon as his principles began to fall away, he snapped off a few ears of corn from one garden, dug up some potatoes from another, and ate a couple of green vegetables. Imagine those people just being like, well, you probably wouldn't notice the corn, but the potatoes, you'd be like, what the heck? Someone dug up a potato plant here? Which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but they grow underground. That's an inside joke for those of you who are new to the channel, which, by the way, thanks for being here. Anyway. Once during his first weeks away, he spent the night in an unoccupied cabin. It was a miserable experience. The stress of that, the sleepless worry about getting caught, programmed me not to do that again. Knight never slept indoors after that, not once, no matter how cold or rainy the weather. That would suck. Here's another picture. If you want to look at his camp, you can probably Google it. Christopher Knight's camp. He's got a lot of tarps, some propane tanks, a lot of Oscar the Grouch garbage cans. He continued moving south, picking through the gardens, and eventually reached a region with a familiar distribution of trees, along with a diversity of bird calls and temperature range he felt accustomed to. It had been colder up north. Knight wasn't sure precisely where he was, but he knew that it was home ground. It turned out that he was less than 30 miles as the crow flies from his childhood home. In the early days, nearly everything Knight learned was through trial and error. He had been gifted with a good head for figuring out workable solutions to complicated problems. All his skills, from the rigging of the tarps that formed his shelter to how to store drinking water to walking through the forest without leaving tracks, went through multiple revisions and were never considered perfect. Tinkering with his systems was one of Knight's hobbies. It's probably also a way to stay sane, because even if you're not a fan of being around people, being alone forever, it's at some point, well, maybe not, I don't know. At some point, I imagine, like, I don't mind being alone for long periods of time, but I've never been alone for like more than a month. So yeah, and that's just when I was working alone. So, and I wasn't even truly alone because I was texting. So yeah, I wonder what that would be like. I often describe myself as a extroverted introvert. I like being around people and being within like friend groups, but I also have no problem being alone. I don't know what I prefer though. My husband's idea of camping is going for a 3-day horse ride deep in the mountains. Not for me. Oh, that would be fun. We were scheduled to camp across Canada when COVID hit. Oh, you should have done it. I did a lot of survival camping back in my younger days and learned how to eat off the land. I have never done that. But eating off the land here would be relatively easy depending on where you were, because you got tons of wild strawberries, tons of wild Saskatoons, tons of wild strawberries, which, by the way, we got strawberries in Armando's yard. They just popped up. I didn't know what they were, so I picked one of the flowers. I showed it to Ashley, and she was like, oh, that's strawberries. Duh. And I was like, oh. He just has like a random patch of a bunch of strawberries that are just within his grass. Clover, whatever. Grass and clover. Anyways. Over the next few months, Knight tried living in several places in the area, including inside a dank hole in a river bank, all without satisfaction. Finally, he stumbled upon a region of nasty boulder-choked woods without so much as a game trail running through it. Far too harsh for hikers. He liked it immediately. Then he discovered a cluster of boulders, one with a hidden opening that led to a tiny, wondrous clearing. I knew at once it was ideal, so I settled in. And then a bear came and claimed it, and then you were screwed. That would be the one thing. If you're only eating berries and vegetables that you're stealing, like that, you gotta eat a lot, I imagine. I mean, I know that nowadays being a vegan is a lot easier than it would have been, years ago. But like, if you're in the woods, it's probably not that easy. You probably have to worry about hunger a lot more. So trying to get an animal would probably be, a continuous thought. So that you can get some fat in you from although if you had nuts, but where are the nuts gonna be? It depends on your climate. I don't know. Over the next few months, Knight tried living in several places. Oh wait, I already read that paragraph. Let me continue on the next one. Still, he remained hungry. Knight was beginning to realize that it's almost impossible to live by yourself all the time. You need help. Hermits across history often ended up in deserts or mountains or woodlands, the sorts of places where it was extremely difficult to find or catch all your own food. To feed themselves, some of the desert fathers, 3rd century Christian hermits from Egypt, wove reed baskets and sold them. In ancient China, hermits were shamans herbalists and diviners. What's a diviner? Does anyone know what a diviner is? I'll just type in nuts grow in BC. You mean the people? No, I'm just kidding. Yes, BC would be a lot easier to survive completely void of any like necessary skill than it would be here, depending on where you are in BC. Like here, almost no matter where you are, it's freezing cold in the winter, and you will die if you aren't staying warm. You will die within minutes in some temperatures, within hours in most other temperatures. Like death is, it's inevitable. Divine finds wire. Wire? A diviner is someone who looks for water with a branch. Oh, with like a divining rod. Okay. So the Chinese hermits were diviners, so they would find water for people. Like I've heard of people doing that. Even my mom says that someone did that for them to dig their well. And I was like, okay, how was that even like? Wh- how does that work? I know, like I think on MythBusters they busted that. Like it's not real, but like how come it works? I guess because water is underground, so if you dig deep enough, you'll find it. I don't know. I don't know. Does anyone understand that? Like how it works? Like the science of it? We had a water witch come find our well, and it worked. A water witch? Also a person who predicts the future. Oh, okay. So someone who guesses and is mostly wrong. Okay. Uh, okay, hold on. Let me find my place here. It was believed that hermits radiated kindness and thoughtfulness, so advertisements were placed in newspapers for ornamental hermits who were lax in grooming and willing to sleep in caves on the country estate of the arist- aristocracy? Aristocracy. How do you say that word? Aristocracy. Like the aristocrats of the aristocracy. Whatever. The job paid well and hundreds were hired, typically on 7-year contracts. Some of the hermits would even emerge at dinner parties and greet guests. I don't know if that's a real hermit, is it? Main winter is harsh. I heard he broke into places to stay warm. Apparently, he didn't break into anywhere, no matter how cold or how bad the weather was. Apparently, but maybe it changes further on in the story. Has to do with your own personal energy that is amplified. Okay, so it's for sure not real. Okay. Uh, Knight, however, felt that anyone willing assistance tainted the whole enterprise. He wished to be unconditionally alone, uncontacted, an uncontacted tribe of one. The cabin around the ponds in central Maine, Knight noted, had mineral security measures. No, minimal, not mineral. Windows were often left open, even when the owners were away. The woods offered excellent cover, and with few permanent residents, the area would always be empty during the off-season. A summer camp with a big pantry was nearby. The easiest way to become a hunter-gatherer here was obvious. And so Knight decided to steal. Oh, who was it who said that he slept in cabins? Because further up, he was like, no matter what, I'm not staying in a cabin again. And now he's like, you know what? Let's steal from these people who have their summer cabins. To commit 1,000 break-ins before getting caught, a world-class streak requires precision and patience, daring, and luck. It also demands a specific understanding of people. I looked for patterns, Knight said. Everyone has patterns. That's true. Everyone does have patterns. He perched at the edge of the woods and meticulously observed the habits of the families with cabins along the ponds. He watched their quiet breakfasts and dinner parties, their visitors and vacancies, the cars moving up and down the road. Nothing Knight saw tempted him to return to his former life. His surveillance was clinical, informational, mathematical. He did not learn anyone's name. All he sought was to understand migration patterns. When people went shopping, when a cabin was unoccupied. After that, he said, everything in his life became a matter of timing. The ideal time to steal was deep in the night, midweek, preferably when it was overcast. Best in the rain. A heavy downpour was prime. People stayed out of the woods when it was wet. Yeah, that's true for a big lot of people. People decide not to go camping or to their cabins and stuff when the weather's not good. Because if all you can do is stay inside, you may as well stay inside at home where you have a bathroom. Although lots of cabins have bathrooms nowadays. Still, Knight did not walk on roads or trails, just in case, and he never launched a raid on a Friday or Saturday. Days he knew had arrived from the obvious surge in lakeside noise. For a while, he opted to go out when the moon was large so he could use it as a light source. In later years, when he suspected the police had intensified their search for him, he switched to no moon at all. Knight liked to vary his methods. He didn't want to develop any pattern of his own, though he did make it a habit to embark on a raid only when freshly shaved or with a neatly groomed beard and wearing clean clothing, so as to reduce suspicion on the slight chance that he was spotted. That makes sense, because if you see someone who looks like a homeless dude, you might be a little wary just based off of like your, I don't know, your prejudice towards people who live on the street or whatever. You just be like, I don't trust him. He's gonna break into my house. Oh, he's shaved his beard. He looks like a nice guy. I'm gonna leave and it's fine. Everyone's different, of course. Aristocracy. Aristocracy. That's how you say it. Aristocracy. That sounds. I know that word. I've heard that word before. Uh, He did break into places to take supplies, but not to sleep. You know this story, Stephanie. He got caught stealing. Spoiler alert. Night, everyone. Happy camping. And the divining is real, to do with the pool of water. Hey, maybe it is. Maybe it is. As far as I know from just watching Mythbusters, really, and no one having a real explanation. I'm just like, I don't know. Seems like luck. Because I've also heard of people not finding water, and then someone who comes in to dig a well finds the water that apparently where there was none. And where they said there was water, there was no water. So did the water just leave? Or, there's all these things. Of course, I guess you're extra critical of things that are that seem mystical, I guess. So it's easy to dismiss it altogether, whereas you might not dismiss, like, say a guy who comes to dig your well, who does it as his profession with whatever geological type. Would it be geology? I guess maybe, I don't know what it would be. And then they often also don't find the water, or they have to dig like 20 miles down. That might be an over-exaggeration. 20 miles. That seems like a long ways. For a while, he opted to go out when the moon was... Oh, read that, sorry. There was at least 100 cabins in Knight's thieving repertoire. The ideal was a fully stocked place, obviously, with the family away until the weekend, obviously. He knew in many cases the precise number of steps required to reach a particular cabin, and once he selected a target, he bounded and weaved through the forest. Sometimes he was headed far or needed a load of propane or a replacement mattress. Sometimes, if he was headed far or needed a load of propane or a replacement mattress, it was easier to travel by canoe. Canoes are difficult to hide, and if you steal one, the owner will call the police. It was wiser to borrow, and there was a large selection around the lake, some up on sawhorses and seldom used. Right, yeah, you borrow it, you put it back. That makes sense. Knight was capable of reaching homes anywhere along the largest pond near his hidden campsite. I'd think nothing of paddling for hours, whatever needed to be done. If the water was choppy, he would place a few rocks in the front of the boat to keep it stable. Typically, he stayed close to shore, cloaked against the trees, hiding in the silhouette of the land. Though on a stormy night, he would paddle across the middle, alone in the dark and lashed by the rain. Canoeing in the rain sucks. Or I have never canoed in the rain, but kayaking in the rain, dang, it's not great. When he arrived at his chosen cabin, he would make sure there were no vehicles in the driveway, no sign of someone inside. Blah blah blah. Burglary is a dicey business with a low margin for error. One mistake and the outside world would snatch him back, so he crouched in the dark and waited, sometimes for hours. I enjoy being in the dark, he said. He never risked breaking into a home occupied year round, and he always wore a watch so he could monitor the time. So, this guy chose to do this with no planning and then resorted to stealing. I'm not sure I'm a fan of this guy. It's like, it's everyone else's problem. Sometimes cabins were left unlocked. Those were the easiest to enter, though soon other places became nearly as simple. Knight had keys to them, found during previous break-ins. He stashed each key on his prospective property, typically under some nondescript rock. He created several dozens of these stashes and never forgot where one was. Huh. A lot of the places that you'll go, like backcountry around here, you'll come across a cabin, and they're almost always unlocked. It's kind of like a what would you say? It's like a courtesy that you have for like someone who might be lost or who might, say they're sledding or something and they run out of gas or whatever. They can, seek refuge in a cabin, and there's typically a stock of wood and stuff so you can get warm and stuff because people die all the time from exposure. So a lot of the cabins around are unlocked, and oftentimes they'll have like a note on the door, saying leave it how you found it, stuff like that, which is pretty cool. And I in fact wanted to build a cabin with my brother-in-law when we were kayaking on the river. We didn't know how far away we were from the pickup, and I was like, we should do this all the time, and we should build a cabin wherever we figure out where the halfway point is, and that will be where we stay if like the pickup point is too far to reach in one day. But instead of doing that, we've never gone kayaking together again on that river, and we've never built a cabin together. We just never did it again on that river. We've gone on smaller rivers, like the Sturgeon River. If you're local to here, you'll know this. The Sturgeon River. It's a very small. Well, it's long, but it's a small. Like it's very narrow. It's more of a creek, but I don't know what would designate it as a river. I guess what it feeds and what it comes out of. Maybe I don't know. But there's a creek called Adam Creek, which meanders kind of with it and away from it quite a bit as well. Comes from another direction, sort of. Anyway, or not sort of, but it does, but it stays with it for a long time as well. We went down both of those for hours, and that was a lot of fun. It was like they're very narrow, and they had really tall, like, reeds and, like, what do you call those? The cattails. And as I was going through, you're pretty silent on a kayak. And so I snuck up by accident on a coyote that was drinking. And I was just like going through. And in fact, he actually might not have been drinking. He might have been thinking I was a duck or something, just because you don't make very much noise as you're paddling through. And it's a slow moving river, but or a creek, but it was fast enough that you didn't have to paddle a lot. And so as I rounded this corner, I bet this coyote, if he wasn't drinking, he was like, this is going to be an easy lunch. But then it was me, and he freaked out and he ran away, and it scared the crap out of me because I was not expecting there to be anything. But later on into the evening, it was getting to be about blue hour. We came into this opening, and there was these two majestic ass swans that were just swimming in this big, not big, but like bigger than my pond if you've seen my pond in my videos, but like not a lake, right? Just a bigger pond. And we went into that opening, and then the as we came up to the swans, they kind of just took off, and then they like flew in a circle, and then they came back and landed further away from us, and then we just kept going into back into the creek until it was dark, or not dark dark, but dark-ish. Then we turned around and dragged these kayaks along. It's much harder going upstream. Anyway, it's pretty cool to see those swans because there's swans around. There's lots, but uh, like you don't see them that often. Say, what were you painting today, dude? How did you know? Oh, you can see it on my hands. That will be in the next vlog. A lot of nerves to take from others, right? I ruin watches often. Knight wasn't a survivalist. He was an advanced couch surfer. Minus the couch. A lot of the time, the cabins are owned by out-of-state people with money, though he did steal from a special needs camp. Oh, what a dick. Oh, man. I used to love hiking in the rain. Swimming in a lake during a summer rain is awesome, too. Swimming in a lake is disgusting. I don't... I shouldn't say it's disgusting. I hate not being able to see what is in there. I've swam in lakes many times, but man, it gives me the willies. I'm just like, man, I'm not a fan of this. Or the ocean. Screw the ocean. When I was in Seattle, we were like chilling at the pier or whatever you call it, where the ferries come in. There was like this Pike's Market, I think it was called. Um, anyways, we were chilling there, and I was staring into the water, right? Just looking, and soon, like the blackness of the ocean, I like it like my eyes adjusted to it, and I could finally peer into the water, like through the water, and there was just hundreds of jellyfish, and I was just like, ugh, that's disgusting. Like, just imagine jumping in there and just being zapped to death. I don't know if those jellies were the kind that can kill you, but I was like, no thanks. And I thought it was crazy how these boats, these big ass ferries, these like 2-tier car ferries with however many levels on top of that, like they come in right up to the shore. I'm like, how freaking deep is it right here? And like, how long are these posts that are holding up the pier? Like, blew my mind. Anyway, that was pretty cool though. And then I saw my first wild octopus. I tried to point it out to everyone else, but it was hard to see because it like when it would like grab onto the like rock, it would like churn into the rock. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like an octopus change like its skin or whatever, but like it's not like it just turns to the color of the rock. It like turns into the rock. Like, it doesn't get hard, I imagine, but it looks like the rock. Like, it is very convincing camouflage, whatever octopuses are. But when it would swim, it would be like orange, like orangey red, and it was just like, it was so cool. And anyway, I'm getting off track here, which I always do during these, by the way. There is a YouTube channel called Camping with Steve. He just does stealth camping. I believe I think it might be him, but maybe not. But Ryan, I think watches him. If you are caught in the bush, just look for willow, as they love water. Oh, they do. Absolutely. I like that he went from I'm starving and won't take from this garden because of my high morals to don't mind if I do to basically whatever you want. Yeah, he's like, oh man, I can't take these these freaking beans. Is that a mattress over there? I think I will take that. And I will also stash their key in case I need another mattress later. And I will take all their Ritz crackers. Uh, Anyways, when he arrived to his chosen cabin, he would make sure there was no vehicles in the driveway. I already read this. He never risked breaking into home occupancy. Sometimes the cabins. Okay, hold on. I've read lots of this. He noticed when several cabins left out pens and paper requesting a shopping list. Yo, what? He noticed when several cabins left out pens and paper requesting a shopping list and others offered him bags of supplies hanging from a doorknob, but he was fearful of traps or tricks or initiating any sort of correspondence, even a grocery list. So he left everything untouched and people stopped. I guess you would get suspicious. If you're doing something wrong, your first thought is this is a trap. Like like well, I don't know. Even when you're not doing something wrong, sometimes you will think that. Like think of like the stark contrast you have when you interact with a firefighter versus when you interact with a police officer. Right? Even when you're not doing anything wrong, you feel like something is not going to go in your favor when there's a cop behind you. But if there's a fire truck, you're like, oh, awesome. Those guys are coming back from a something or whatever. So I guess depending on the situation, you might think there's a trap anyway, just because that's kind of the human condition. But I guess with cops it's different. They just have a bad reputation because of the bad apples. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. For the majority of his break-ins, Knight worked the lock on a window or door. He always carried his lock breaking kit, a gym bag with a collection of screwdrivers and flat bars and files, all of which he had stolen, and could defeat all but the most fortified bolts with the perfect little jiggle of just the right tool. When he had finished stealing, he would often reseal the hasp on the window he had unlatched and exit through the front door, making sure the handle was set, if possible, to lock up behind himself. No need to leave the place vulnerable to thieves. Not, those are bad thieves. Me, I'm thieving for survival. As the local residents invested in security upgrades, Knight adapted. He knew about alarms from his one paying job, and he used his knowledge to continue stealing, sometimes disabling systems or removing memory cards from surveillance cameras. He evaded dozens of attempts to catch him by police officers and private citizens. The crime scenes he left behind were so clean that the authorities offered their begrudging respect. The level of discipline he showed while he broke into houses, said one police officer, is beyond what any of us can remotely imagine. The legwork, the reconnaissance, the talent with locks, his ability to get in and out without being detected. That would be a cool craft to hone, but like at the cost of like your moral compass completely being obliterated. Like I just wouldn't do it. But unless like there was some sort of exercise where you could do it without any harm being done. I know that when I was a kid, we broke into houses all the time, like cabins, not into people's family homes, but just their cabins around the lake and stuff. And like we thought it was such like a riot. It was so fun to do because like the thrill of doing it without getting caught, especially when they would come home or come to their vacation home and escaping without making any noise. Oh, it was such a rush. Also completely stupid. I would never do that now. Now I would get arrested. At the time I was a minor, that nothing would have happened beyond the discipline from my mother, unless they of course press charges, which maybe they would have, but I don't know. My mom would have kicked my ass, but Anyways, a burglary report filed by another officer specifically noted the crime's unusual neatness. The hermit, many officers felt, was a master thief. It was as if he were showing off, picking locks yet stealing little, playing a strange sort of game. You know, I had an employee one time who would steal from the houses that we worked in, and he screwed up one time because I saw it, something. I was like, where did you get that? And he just admitted it. And I was like, oh, okay. Thanks. Thanks for being like that. But he said that he did it with every house that we ever worked in. So I was just like, no one has ever complained about things being stolen or taken or missing or anything. I had no idea. And I drove the frickin' guy. Uh, like, it's so weird to want to steal, but steal something like, I don't know. This is just bringing that to mind because the things that he stole, like what I noticed was a Lego man. I was just like, I recognize that Lego man. He just happened to be holding it in his hand rather than having it in his pocket. And he told me that he doesn't understand why he takes it. He just can't help himself. And I was like, well, not anymore. Uh, Anyways, Knight said the moment he opened a lock and entered a home, he always felt a hot wave of shame. Every time I was very conscious that what I was doing was wrong. I took no pleasure in it, none at all. Once inside a cabin, he moved purposefully, hitting the kitchen first before making a quick sweep of the house, looking for any useful items, or the batteries he always required. He never turned on a light. He used only a small torch attached to a metal chain he wore around his neck. You know how disappointing it is? Like, even when, like, Ashley does this, I will have a bag of chips, and I will put it in the pantry, right? And I won't touch it for days or even weeks. And then when I finally go to get it and it's not there, I'm just like, come on, why? Now that I'm finally in the mood for this, it's gone, and I'll be like, Ashley, and then she'll be like, sorry. I'm like, if you're gonna eat it, buy another one. What the heck's going on here? No, it's not a big deal. It's just a bummer because I can't just go to the store very easily because it's too far away. Well, it's not too far away. It's just a bug. Excuse me. It's just a bugger to go to town when it's like 20 minutes away. During a burglary, there wasn't a moment's ease. My adrenaline was spiking, my heart rate was soaring, my blood pressure was high. I was always scared when stealing, always. I wanted it over as quickly as possible. So he never eased into it. So his moral compass was like, it was bugging him. The angel on his shoulder was like, don't do it. Pretty gutsy to borrow in Maine. Mainers don't mind if asked, but if not, not a good idea. Do you guys have, what are your gun laws like out there? Or what are your self-defense and preservation of property laws like? Sounds like a petty thief who romanticized his crimes and wrote a story about it, lol. Well, he didn't write the story. Someone else wrote the story for him, but it seems like he had no problem telling it. But maybe that was like, somehow that was, he had to do it or something. We'll see. Does he interfere with the radio waves when he goes near a radio? I tend to do that as well. What? Smart people have gnomes to protect their cabin. What? I'm always making the sensors go off when I go into the store. It sucks. Okay, maybe you're the one person in my experience who actually has like these special powers. I used to work with a guy who left his truck unlocked, so if someone decided they wanted to check if there was something to steal, they wouldn't break in to check. That's exactly what I do. And it bugs everyone. But I'm like, dude, this truck, I don't want it to be broken. You don't understand. So there's nothing to steal in it. If they just open the door, they'll be like, oh, there's nothing in here. If they decide to steal the truck, they're going to break the window to do that anyway. And when I get it back, I would prefer to have the least amount of damage possible. So, if I get it back. I'm so short, the sensors in automatic doors usually miss me and don't open. You gotta like wave your hand. Uh, it isn't the sensors that open the doors, it is the alarm ones when you take something from the store that I always set off. That's just someone's pranking you. They just stuck one of those stickers on the bottom of your shoe. You know, I actually went to school with a guy who that's how he would steal things. He would stick one of those on the bottom of his shoe and then put stuff in his pockets and go through the thing, and then he'd be like, "Well, I don't have anything," and then he would like look around and then he'd like lift up his shoe and he'd be like, "Oh, it's this," and then he'd put his hand through with it in his hand and it would go off and he'd be like, "Oh, that's weird," and then he would just leave. One time, I wanted to get a Valentine gift for a girl who I liked in my class, and I only had like $8 or something like that. But I wanted to get her like chocolates and a stuffed animal, and I couldn't afford both, but I wanted to get both. I wanted to impress her, I guess. And he's like, "Oh, I can get it for $8." I was like, "Oh, where?" And he's like, "No, I'll get it for you." And I was like, "What? All right." And then that's how I found out that he was stealing shit. I had no idea because I never stole anything. I did steal things like when I was really young, like we'd steal gum and stuff. Me and my little brother, which is so dumb. But I have never stolen anything once I like understood like the the what would you call it? The not the not the consequences. I always knew the consequences, but I didn't understand like the consequences to your reputation. Once I understood that, then I never stole again because I didn't want people to label me as a thief. Uh, because then they would think a certain way of me, which wouldn't be accurate except for in that. So if you're a thief, you're also probably these things. And so I wasn't willing to be a thief because I didn't wasn't willing to have other people to have the people think that I was anything, whatever. It's like, oh, he stole, so he's also a this and a that, and I didn't want that. And also, I don't want to be known as a thief either. But anyway, this guy did not care at all. One time, I needed some body spray after gym. And he like opens his locker. He's like, "What flavor?" And he has like all remember Axe body spray. He had all the Axes and he had all the this other brand too. And I was like, "Dude, those are like $11." I can't remember how much they were, but they probably weren't $11. They were probably like $8. But like as a kid in grade 6, like that's expensive to have all of them, especially. My favorite, by the way, of Axe at the time when I wore that was Kilo, the green one. Um, Mind you, I do have some titanium in my back and knee, so that could set them off, perhaps. Maybe. Imagine thinking that you're freaking magic and then it's just, oh, I had surgery, right. You should try going divining in a lake. It is murky water and difficult to navigate, but a challenge. How is it hard? What is divining then? If you're in the lake, you've found the water. You don't even need the stick. You don't need the slingshot to do it. I did not like having my ankles and legs nibbled on while swimming in a lake. Yeah, that's creepy. Have you heard about the octopus that wraps 6 legs around itself to look like a fallen coconut and uses the others to run away? It's brilliant. I have not. I won't go into the lakes and rivers here in Ontario anymore. They are too polluted. Yeah, but what about the giant sturgeons? That's why I wouldn't go in them. Hey, Josh. Can't wait to get your painting. Gabriel in Montreal. Oh, it is Montreal. I refilmed this part like 3 times in the vlog. I refilmed it 3 times because I couldn't remember where you're from. So I said Ontario or Montreal. And then I said Ontario because I was sure it was somewhere in Ontario. And then I just said across Canada. Too late now. She's actually having to work this weekend. No, she's home. The people in the area knew of him. He would take small amounts from places that had a lot and weren't likely to miss it. It doesn't make it okay, but I get his thinking. It's hard to explain why theft is wrong to a burglar because they tend to take things literally. I like that. That's a good one. I love exploring old abandoned buildings. Did a lot as a youth. Me too. That's how I got into painting. Yeah, I hate when that happens. Oh wait, I live alone. Who's eating my chips? We are a constitutional carry state. Yeah, but what are your laws on like shooting someone for stealing from you? Which, by the way, I think that's a little bit of an overreaction. For self-defense, I get it. I feel like I would hate to do that, but I would understand having to have to do that. But yeah. Kill anything you want, but eat what you kill. Yeah, just killing all these people. You gotta eat them. It isn't special powers, Josh. It has to do with magnetic fields. Okay. What flavor of body spray, not what scent? Was he eating this right? No, that's literally what he said. What flavor? I remember it so crystal clear. He's wearing his gray sweatpants and his white shirt, and he opens it up, and he's just like, what flavor? I asked, I was like, hey, does anyone have any Axe? As we were walking from outside where we played soccer, and he was in the locker clump that was closest to those doors. So when I asked it, he just opened his locker and he's like, what flavor? And yeah, I was just like, why do you have so many? I couldn't believe it. I didn't know that he stole them, but then I figured it out that he stole them. I learned what Happy May Long was about thanks to the quiet one, Landon. Oh, right, it's May Long weekend. Nicola Johnson, you wouldn't know that because you're from, where were you from again? Taiwan or something? They don't have May Long weekend. This message is held for review. What does it say? A bunch of dots. Alright. We can show that. Another moderator just handled this. What moderator is here? Matthew, are you here? When he would load everything into a canoe, if he had borrowed one, the paddle to the shore closest to his camp to unload. No. When he would load everything, then he would load everything into a canoe. If he had borrowed one and paddle to the shore closest to his camp to unload, he would return the canoe to the spot he had taken it from, sprinkle some pine needles on the boat to make it appear unused, and haul his loot up through the dense woods between the rocks to his home. Each raid brought Knight enough supplies to last about 2 weeks, and as he settled once more into his room in the woods, back in my safe place, success, he experienced a deep sense of peace. Knight said that he couldn't accurately describe what it felt like to spend such an immense period of time alone. Silence does not translate into words. It's complicated, he said. Solitude bestows an increase in something valuable. I can't dismiss that idea. Solitude increased my perception. But here's the tricky thing. When I applied my increased perception to myself, I lost my identity. There was no audience, no one to perform for. There was no need to define myself. I became irrelevant. I wonder if you're all alone and your only interaction with people is to watch them leave so you can steal from them. Like, do you ever talk? Do you ever, like, hum to yourself or sing? Like, I don't know if you guys who work on stuff, do you ever, like, when something screws up, do you ever like curse at the thing? Are you ever just like, oh, you mother? I do it out loud all the time, even though there's no one around to hear it. It's just me. But I'm just like, you know what? This thing needs to know that I'm upset that it didn't work. um, the dividing line between himself and the forest, Knight said, seemed to dissolve. His isolation felt more like a communion. My desires dropped away. I didn't long for anything. I didn't even have a name. To put it romantically, I was completely free. Ah, the person who said he was romanticizing? Yeah, he just scrolling through the chat, I see no blue wrenches. Right? I don't see any either. Hi Josh, I used to swim in the ocean with jellyfish as a kid. We used to get sticks to push them away. Yeah, they do sting. Yes, they do sting. Winter can be a survival blessing, often easier to deal with that than the cold coastal wet rain winters. I talk to myself all the time. Renee seems like the type to talk to herself all the time. I feel like since you keep so many stats, especially from my brother, I feel like you like probably have like a lot of lists and you probably like read them out, and then when you go shopping, you're probably like the type of person who's like, okay, what do I need? I need olives, I need cranberries, and I need orange juice. I don't know why those three things. And a cucumber. Archie is here. It just startled me. I feel like you do that, and then, but you don't forget your list. You just read the list out loud, but like, not reading it, you just know what's on the list. I don't know. I don't know why. Like, if I ever meet you, I'm just going to be either disappointed that you're not how I think you are in my head, or I'm going to be like, that's exactly who I thought you were. Not that I'd be disappointed that you're not who I think you are. You're your own person. You don't have to be what I think you are. It's just like a lot of people, names that I recognize, I'm just like, oh, they probably play a lot of ping pong. Which, why would I think that? Just cause ping pong is fun, and some of you seem fun. What am I making with that list? Probably like some sort of like mother-in-law visiting dinner or something. I don't know. Virtually everyone who has tried to describe deep solitude has said something similar. I am nothing. I see all, wrote Ralph Waldo Emerson. Lord Byron called it the feeling infinite. The American mystic Thomas Merton said that the true solitary does not seek himself, but loses himself. For those who do not choose to be alone, like prisoners and hostages, a loss of one's socially created identity can be terrifying, a plunge into madness. Psychologists call it ontological insecurity, losing your grip on who you are. Yeah. Yeah, if you're not doing it voluntarily, that must be like a type of torture. Edward Abbey in Desert Solitaire, a chronicle of 2 6-month stints as a ranger in Utah's Arches National Monument, said that being solitary for a long time means risking everything human. Knight, meanwhile, didn't even keep a mirror in his camp. He was never once bored. He wasn't sure, he said, that he even understood the concept of boredom. I was never lonely, Knight added. He was attuned to the completeness of his own presence rather than to the absence of others. If you like solitude, he said, you are never alone. That's what he looks like? Dude, I would call the cops on this guy, even though I never call the cops. I would call the cops on this guy if I just saw him, like, at Walmart, okay? He definitely has a criminal history that needs to be addressed. How rude. It doesn't help that he's in prison garb. It's just like, I'm just like, what the heck? This is not what I was expecting him to look like. I know that he was out there for 25 years, and so how old would he be? He'd be 45. That's a rough 45. 47. The elements were not kind to this man. Knight was finally arrested. After 27 years of complete isolation while stealing food at a lakeside summer camp, he was charged with burglary and theft. Are you going to tell us how? I hope. And taken to the local jail. His arrest caused an enormous commotion. Letters and visitors arrived at the jail, and approximately 500 journalists requested an interview. A documentary film team showed up. A woman proposed marriage. Okay. I feel like anyone who proposes to you who doesn't know you, that's a red flag. That's happened to me a couple times from women and men, and it's weird every time. Everyone wanted to know what the hermit would say. What insights had he gained while he was alone? What advice did he have for the rest of us? People have been approaching hermits with similar requests for thousands of years, eager to consult with someone whose life has been so radically different to their own. Okay, but how did he get caught? Did I miss? No, I didn't miss anything. Profound truths, or at least those that make sense of the seeming randomness of life, are difficult to find. Thoreau wrote that he had reduced his existence to its basic elements so that he could live deep and suck all of the marrow of life. This guy is, excuse me, this guy has some good lines. Knight did eventually permit one journalist to meet him, and over the course of 9 one-hour visits in the jail, the hermit shared his life story about how he was able to survive and what it felt like to live alone for so long. And once, when he was in an especially introspective mood, Knight seemed willing, despite his typical aversion to dispensing wisdom, to share more of what he gleaned while alone. Was there, the journalist asked him, some grand insight revealed to him in the wild? Knight sat quietly, but he eventually arrived at a reply. Get enough sleep, he said. He set his jaw in a way that conveyed he wouldn't be saying any more. This was what he'd learned. It was, without question, the truth. Oh, stop. That's it? How did he get caught? Okay, I gotta Google this. I gotta googly moogly this. How did you get caught, dude? What's his name again? Christopher Knight. How did Christopher Knight get caught? Why would you not put that in the freaking article? This doesn't make any sense. Let's Wikipedia it, okay? Capture and aftermath. Okay. Hold on, let me catch up on the chat here. Maybe you should have stole more moisturizer. You gotta read the book. I'm not gonna read the book, but I would listen to the book. Yeah, because I just looked up the article to see what he looks like. Definitely crossing to the other side of the street if I see him coming my way. I never cross the street when even if someone sketchy is looking, because I never want them to be like, why are you crossing the street? Because of you? Look at you. Have you seen you? Especially if they're another race than me. Then I definitely don't. Because I don't ever want them to be like, you racist asshole. Is it because I'm such and such? I had the same pair of glasses the entire time. Oh, he had the same pair of glasses the entire time. So he probably, his vision sucked. And then when he finally got new glasses, he was like, wow, I probably wouldn't have gotten caught if I had these suckers. I think the cops were waiting for him at the cabin, if I remember right. The line between sanity and insanity is a fine one. I spend a lot of time alone, so I talk to myself and talk to the animals around me, whether it's my dogs or the birds or squirrels. I'm not lonely at all. Probably got caught how most thieves get caught, red-handed or in the middle of the act. A bait cabin, cliffhanger. Maybe it is here. Hi, Josh. Hello, Richard and Sherry. Okay. Knight was captured by Game Warden Sergeant Terry Hughes on April 4th, 2013. That's the year before I No, that's the year after. I was like, wait, this doesn't make sense. That's the year after I started painting. While burglaring the Pine Tree Camp in Rome, Maine, he was sentenced. Okay, but that's not enough detail. What is the Pine Tree Camp in Rome, Maine? He was sentenced to 7 months in jail. Dude, he's stolen how much? Of which he had already served all but a week while awaiting sentencing. In addition to, he was probably like, can I be in solitary, please? In addition to the jail sentence, Knight paid $2,000 in restitution to victims, completed a co-occurring disorder court program designed for people with substance abuse problems and mental health disorders, and completed 3 years of probation. Knight has described deep-felt ethical misgivings about the burglaries committed, saying that stealing is wrong. Even the prosecutor said a longer sentence would have been cruel. Judge Nancy Mills believes that Knight was unlikely to reoffend. After release, Knight met with the judge every week, avoided alcohol, and secured a job with his brother. Dude, his brother was probably like, what the? You're alive, bro? Like, if I did that to my brother Dakota, he would be pissed. My other brothers probably would be angry as well, but not as much as Dakota. Journalist Michael Finkel met with Knight for 9 one-hour sessions while he was in jail. This was the genesis for first. This was the genesis for first an article in GQ in 2014, and then the book "The Stranger in the Woods" published in 2017. Knight was largely reluctant to express any inkling of motives or insights gained through his experience, but he did offer, "Solitude bestows an increase in something valuable. My perception. But when I applied my increased perception to myself, I lost my identity. There was no audience, no one to perform for. To put it romantically, I was completely free." Finkel compared his observation to similar statements by these other people, which we already read in the other article. Instead of calling him a dilettante because Thoreau only lived for 2 years in his Walden Pond cabin and his mother did his laundry, saying he was just a show off who went out there and wrote a book saying, "Look how great I am." Knight has led a quiet life in rural Maine. Oh, that didn't make any sense. Let me read that full thing so that makes sense. Finkel compared this observation, so Finkel being the article writer, compared this observation to similar statements, holy crap, I can't read here, by Ralph Waldo Emerson, Charles Fauconld, and Thomas Merton. Knight, however, resented being compared to Henry David Thoreau, instead calling him a dilettante because Thoreau only lived for 2 years in the Walden Pond cabin and his mother did his laundry, saying, "Mother did his laundry." And so he calls him, or he says, he's just a show-off who went out there and wrote a book saying, "Look how great I am." Knight now leads a quiet life in rural Maine. Okay, that's still, how did you get caught, my dude? How did you, like... Okay, I already read that. What? Yeah? Sure. Yeah, I'm almost done here. Okay, does anyone know how he was caught? Because this is going to bug the crap out of me. So it must have been a... Okay, Christopher Knight. Caught. Bait cabin. He was caught red-handed, yes, but like... How did you know where he was going to be? Or were you like, wait, that guy has a beard. Let's arrest him. Like, how? Richard and Cherry are the smart people I was talking about who have gnomes to protect their cabin. Oh, right. The article is here. I've seen it. No, I have the article, but I read the entire article. How did they get caught? Like, how did he get caught? Mental health problems, you don't say. Did he have marital relations? I don't think so. Not. I mean, it didn't say. Also, didn't say how he got caught. Personally, I think that makes him a dirtbag. You pushed one too many envelopes. Maybe, yep. Christopher Knight, 47, was arrested when he tripped a surveillance center while allegedly stealing food from a camp for people with special needs in a small town in the far northeastern part of ME. What is that? I'm very late, but mom card is here. Sending loan. Sending love, not loan. He tripped a surveillance sensor that they had set to trap him. That is not cool at all. That's like when you find out, like, what's the dude, the Catch Me If You Can guy? How did he get caught? It was something super lame, right? He was so clever. He's like, oh yeah, I'm freaking the Flash or whatever his name is. And he's like, oh, all these things. He's like, oh, I'm such and such FBI. I'm gonna leave you my wallet and you can give it to me when we get downstairs. And then he gets, hold on. How did the Catch Me If You Can dude get caught? Cashing checks. Right. He just got sloppy. Yeah. Here's the lesson. If you're going to become a criminal, do it so well and for so long that people begin to think that it's awesome, and then you won't get in that much trouble. Depends on the crime. If you're murdering people, people will probably never be like, oh, dude, that's awesome. You should not let him go to jail. He'll be fine. Or any of those other, adjacent crimes. ME equals Maine. Did you think it was going to be a Home Alone situation? Dude, no, I just thought it would be oh, but the freaking dad was home because he had diarrhea and then, or something. Where it's just like, it's always good when it ends in diarrhea. That's a good story. So he sneaks into a cabin, right? Thinks no one's home because it smells like shit. So he's like, oh, they need to, because I don't know if you've been in cabins that have not been occupied for a long time for whatever reason. The plumbing sucks. So if there's no water in the what do you call it, the P trap, it's the worst. So he just thinks it's that, but it's no, it's Mr. Hinkle. He's home and he's not taking kindly to a bearded 45-year-old man who looks like he's 70 in his home. He's gonna lay down the law with a broomstick. Oh wait, it's in Maine. He probably had a shotgun or something. And he's like, put down my Skittles, dude. I'm calling the police. You can chill right here. Caught on the toilet. No, not him caught on the toilet. He just thought the smell was emptiness of the cabin. But it was not. It was Mr. Hinkle. And he did not take kindly to his Skittles tropical flavor being stolen. So he grabs his 12 gauge and he's like, excuse me, sir. You don't belong here. I'm calling the cops. Oh, shit. Almost spilled my orange juice. Alright, guys. That's it. We figured it out. It was not as good of an article as I was hoping, but it was way better than the other ones that I had in the previous after churches. If you would like to see more of the after churches, please join my Patreon. They're super random. Next week, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it'll be just on Patreon. I didn't mean to actually do this here, but I'm kind of glad I did, because I had a lot more people contributing to this conversation. There's a good story about living off grid called Caruso of Lonesome Lake. You'd probably enjoy that one too. Do enjoy your dinner. Say hi to Miss. Oh, you heard her? This is good ears. Or a good microphone. So all those people who say that Ashley needs a microphone when she's right here, but you can hear her when she's upstairs, I don't know how that computes. Mind you, while he was in jail, he got 3 square meals a day and had indoor plumbing. What was his plumbing situation like? Prison may be just one word, but to others it's a whole sentence. Zing! Where can we find this story? Okay, I found it on The Guardian. I typed in man in forest, let's see, for 27 years. Christopher Knight. Yeah, there we go. The Guardian. That's the first article that comes up. Into the Woods. How one man survived alone in the wilderness. Really didn't have like 9 hours per session, and this is his article. I mean, how did he not put in? And how did you come to be caught? You know what? No one will care about that part. We'll leave that out. And then he's like, 4 years later, he's like, oh shit, I should have put that in the article. You know what? I'll write a book. Make some cashola off this guy. I have his story on now. Like, you're watching it? She has a lovely voice. What if she didn't say, hey, should I make dinner? Or whatever she said? What if she said, hey Josh, you effing asshole, what the hell are you doing down there still on the computer? She would never say that, but that would be hilarious. I'm going to get her to say that next time. All right, guys. Thanks for being here for After Church. Thanks for joining my Patreon. Remember, Tier 1 is only $3, and you'll get this every Sunday until you stop being a patron. Also, you get your name on the door. I have to put some new names on there. But for now, that's it. Until next week, or actually we're going to do the build for this month here coming up.